There once was a man named Bhenji. He worked every day with one thing on his mind, spending his hours and minutes ranking his games. He didn't care whether they were long or short, easy or hard. And so here we sit at the edge of the world with Bhenji's top 100 games. Mage Wars Academy. It's still not clear to me why my number 70 is set in an academy, but to be fair, that's a completely redundant point in the context of the game itself. This isn't a Magic the Gathering clone, not even close really, but it can give you that sense of gameplay, where you've got creatures, damage spells, enchantments, etc, etc. And it's how and when you use the mana you channel to cast these spells from your quite frankly awesome little spell book that will determine the last mage standing. There's a lot to like about this customizable but everything's in the box game. But it should also be said there's only 2 mages in the core box, so you'll have to splash out if you want more diversity in the characters you play. If you want straightforward 1v1 mage spell slinging action with a splash of creature combat, you could do a lot worse. Saint Marlowe. This may well have been my first roll and write. Yep, I think so. And what a game to introduce you to what is now a burgeoning and then some genre. So you're in charge of a fort. You've got a dry white marker, you've got dice. You roll the dice, and then you can re-roll dice. Twice I might add. Wait, doesn't that sound familiar? Well, to a point, but these dice have symbols on them, and those dice allow you to draw merchants or houses or churches, for example, on them, and depending on where you place them in relation to each other is going to mean the difference in a respectable points haul and a god awful one. But that's not all. What's a good fort story without pirates? Or any story for that matter? You must, I repeat, must build up your defences, lest the pirates do more and more damage to your points total come the end. Much respect for our Saint Marlowe. The Lost Expedition. A game inspired by the search for the lost city of El Dorado, and my word are you going to have to overcome some challenges. Think pythons, tigers, spear-wielding natives, disease, misfortune, you name it, you're going to come across it. And all this within a hand management game. But a quite sophisticated one, I should add. So no matter how many players at the table, you'll be playing as 3 adventurers, each with their area of expertise. You'll load up with some provisions and ammunition. The trick then becomes over the course of a morning and afternoon hike, representing the 2 phases of the turn, you'll be laying down said challenges in an order that will allow you to use all your expertise and resources to come out the other side alive. This game represents a really nice cooperative challenge that's not going to overstay its welcome. A very, very welcome new addition to my collection. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Shadows of the Past. I never ever thought I'd see one of my favourite IPs from my misspent youth be morphed into such a stellar dungeon crawler like board game. This is sweet narrative cooperative goodness, albeit with one player needing to take control of the shredder-led bad guys. Each scenario being short and sweet compared to some of its contemporaries is a real selling point to this game. That, as well as the tight combat mechanics and the really cool way you can literally support each other by clever placement of the dice each player rolls to carry out their actions. This is because the different dice you place on the left end of your pool can be used by the player to your left, and the same deal with the right. There's also some pseudo wargaming in here because positioning and terrain are also a consideration. Regardless of IP, this is a great little game that could and proudly sits in my top 100. Valeria: Card Kingdoms. Arguably the perfect marriage between dice and cards. For those of you familiar with the hook from Machikoro, you recruit cards with numbers on them. You roll 2d6 each turn and then gather the resources or strength from those cards that have the same numbers that were rolled. It's a delightfully simple premise that provides a nice rush when the dice gods favour you. You can certainly go all in on certain numbers, thereby providing greater risk but greater reward. or you can spread yourself out a bit, heightening the odds of getting something, but for added thumbs up factor, each player gets a lesser benefit from their cards when it's not their turn to roll dice. Once you've got your supporting cards behind you, it's time to go monster hunting, which is the primary means to gain points. I love the theme, I love the end product, I love the game. Hero Realms. This and its cousin, brother, aunt and uncle style realms is deck building scaled back to its complete core. There are absolutely no bells and whistles on offer here, or are there? Hero Realms is an absolutely fine game out of the box, but the reason this is on my list is because of the campaign boxes. Playing this cooperatively is much more my bag, and really does open up the design space at the same time. Combine this with the hero packs and you'll see character progression as well. Okay, so that's 3 separate products you need to buy to get there, but it's well worth it, trust me. These elements really do bring the game completely to life. Don't get me wrong, you want to get a bare bones competitive deck builder to the table, the base game will suit you fine. But without these added modules, this wouldn't be in my top 100. Chronicles of Crime. Who doesn't like some good old fashioned crime fighting? And in this day and age, you can't fight crime without technology. The tablet is mightier than the sword, as they say. I'm naturally suspicious about games that need an app to run. I often wonder, am I then just playing an interactive video game? And whilst this is true to an extent here, it never feels like I'm not playing a board game. So I'll give it a pass, which gives me an opportunity to gush about how fun and interactive this game is. The whole thing revolves around QR codes, you know, those super barcode type things, and you've got a bunch of characters and locations to interact with, which thankfully is very well presented in card form. So you simply scan one of these and interact with it. Ask questions of those you're interrogating, listen to the answers, solve the crime at hand. Did I mention the awesome 3D crime scenes that you can inspect? Always best to end on a high. Unfair. My golly, you take one letter away from a word and the connotations are whooped upside their head. What should read Funfair is a must-have set collection game for theme park fans like myself. But not just set collection, no, you've got some good old-fashioned take that to entertain you as well, allowing you to sabotage the grandiosity of the other players' parks, but also drafting, because you're always searching for ways to build the most luxury rides and restaurants and amenities that come with all the bells and whistles you'd expect to get the crowds hurtling through those turnstiles. It doesn't boast all the mechanics you'd normally expect from a set collection game, and for me that's a nice change of pace. You need to make the most of the limited actions you can each turn, otherwise you ain't going nowhere near the winner's circle. This is a beautiful game which always helps, and it feels highly thematic to boot. Dice Throne. What happens when you mix 1v1 dueling and spell slinging with plenty of dice rolling and some poker-like combinations that let you do your thing? You guessed it, boys and girls, it's this game I'm talking about right now. Seriously though, what a great idea. Let's start with the artwork, which is phenomenal, vibrant and ultimately winning. But thankfully the game isn't just a showy body and a neat idea. It's all rounded out to a really cool game, one that feels fresh and a little bit different. I only have the first season of this, and production is going ahead on season 3 with co-op elements, but this is more than enough to tide me over. The sense of tension you get when re-rolling your dice, desperately trying to get the ability you wanted to use this turn to smite your foe, only to fall just short, or sometimes even hit the jackpot and unlock your character's ultimate ability, always brings this to the forefront of my mind whenever I want to sit and play mano a mano and fight to the death. Welcome to. What's with all these open-ended titles? Welcome to what? Don't leave me hanging for keep's sake. Okay, I get it. It can be welcome to whatever you want it to be. Let your imagination run wild. I like roll and rights, as I've already had 1 or 2 on my list so far. So by extension I also like flip and rights. I also like the fact that there's a lot of different ways to approach this game without it being too overwhelming for a lightweight crowd. The fact that this accommodates effectively any number of players is a definite boon for its appeal. The elegant design of, if you want this number, you'll only have this action to go with it, and vice versa, means you're really getting exactly what you want. You can even adopt different approaches on the 3 streets on your piece of paper. This is just a great all-round flip and write, and worthy of being this high on my list. I do hope you've enjoyed my choices so far. Stay tuned for the next 10 games on my list. This video has ended.